Yo, what is good, dev guys? Welcome back. In this video, I want to get started with setting up our slide state. So I won't be going through the mathematical equations that you need to set up a physics-based slide, but if you guys want to figure that out on your own, you could go to my boy Reed's channel. He's a very popular YouTuber, especially when it comes to Unreal Blueprint tutorials. He has a good tutorial that shows like the mathematics behind the physics-based slide, and what I had to do was combine it with the custom movement component that I have set up in my project to get it to work perfectly over the network. But for right now, well, we're just going to do a simple slide. It's going to be very straightforward. So let's just jump right in. First place I want to go is into our plugins, shooter core. Let's go to this input folder and where they have the abilities, and let's make our own ability for the slide. We're going to make a Lyra gameplay ability. I'm going to call this GA_slide. Whoops, let me spell that right. And inside of here, whenever this puppy is activated, let's go ahead and print a string. And let's tell ourselves that we're currently sliding. And what I like to do is, I like to usually set this for like 5 seconds, and then I give it a color that's recognizable, because there are a ton of colors and a ton of little debug messages that pop up in this Lyra project. I don't know if you guys noticed that. And right after this, we want to end the ability. And then in end ability, let's go ahead and print another string just to see that we're ending the ability properly. Let's say no longer sliding for that. And you guys remember back in the video where I showed you guys all the different components that you have to keep in mind when creating a new ability. So we need to go to our shooter core. Let's search input. Let's just search input and see if we can find that input hero data. I think it might be in the complete. So let's say hero data. So we got, no, that's not it. So I think it's in shooter core, input, actions, and here we go. We got this input data, shooter game add-ons here. So in here, we want to go ahead and let's give ourselves, and I don't think I want to do this in add-ons, because once we do this in add-ons, it won't work, and I'll show you that. So let's add it right here in add-ons, and you'll see that it won't work. So I want to use the crouch input, and I wanted to give out the ability tag. So input ability, and if we make a sub tag, I've already done this, but if you make a sub tag called slide, that's the tag I want to use, and with better spelling. So input tag ability, and make a sub tag by clicking on this little thing and just call it slide, and then we can use that. And also, I want to give myself the ability, so we need to go to, let's just go to shooter hero ability set right here. And let's give ourselves another array element, and let's say we want to give ourselves a slide. We want to give ourselves the tag that we're looking for. And if we save that and we try to play here, you'll see when we go to hit our button, that's the same as crouch, since we don't have to bind this, because basically sliding is crouching with speed behind it. So you see here, we get that sliding and currently sliding, no longer sliding on both the client and the server. So what we want to do is actually slide. So we go into the slide here, we can do this very nice and very simple and straightforward node here. It's called root motion, add constant force, and this will add force it to us over time, over a certain duration. I'm gonna say about 0.3 third of a second, and we'll want to come into here, and when it's finished, we want to end the ability. So after 0.3 seconds of sliding, it will end the ability. Now we have this enable gravity. We want that. This node, this selection here, this option here, this velocity on finish mode, you can maintain the last root motion velocity. So this will cache the velocity that you had when you first activated this node, which should be our walking speed, and then it'll take us back to this speed. If we have set velocity, we can actually set a velocity on finish, or we can clamp it. We can clamp it to a certain number here as well, but I'm just going to use maintain. You can also use curves if you wanted to. So you can add a curve here, and that curve can be the thing that drives your strength over time, as it says here. Is additive. We kind of want this to take over your motion. A more, I would say, elite slide is kind of additive to the motion that you already have. But since we're not getting really in depth with the math, but there's a lot of math that goes into a nice slide. So since we're not getting into it, this is not really going to suit us, but we can turn it on to see what it does, right? So the strength, let's do something that we're going to recognize, maybe like 3,500. In this world direction, this is where we are actually the direction that we will be sliding into. So what I'm going to do is get our Lyra player controller, and I want to get our control rotation because I just want to slide in the direction that I'm looking. So get control rotation. And if we get the forward vector of this control rotation, this will give us a vector in the direction that we are currently looking. Now, one thing that's going to break this is that we're doing this on the client, the server, all of that. We only want to do this on the server. So what I want to use is that very helpful node, switch on net mode, and plug that in. And I only want to do this if we're the standalone, the dedicated server, or the listen server. So let's go ahead. On the client, this will get replicated to us. This root motion force will get replicated down to us. And then when we end the ability, we'll end the ability. So let's go ahead and test this. So if I'm here and I hit slide, we slide. You see it, we go back into maintaining. But also when we uncrouch, that's the thing that I don't like that's broken. When we uncrouch, we slide again. So what I want to happen is when we crouch the first time, we slide. And then when we uncrouch, we no longer slide. So this makes me want to bring all of this code into here, because if we go to our Lyra source code, we go into the character and we open up the hero component. Inside this hero component, we have this function called input crouch, and this is what is actually toggling our crouch whenever we crouch and uncrouch. So we don't actually want this code to run. Technically, we want to do all this inside of this slide ability, because if we're not ready to slide, we'll crouch, and if we're ready to slide, we'll slide. So first, let's make sure this function here is blueprint callable, which is not. So let's go ahead and give this U function, say blueprint callable, category, Lyra characters, fine. We'll have that. What else will we need? The biggest thing is right now, and this is a bug that I haven't even fixed in my own code base, is if you're basing your slide off of velocity, like you have to reach a certain velocity. Like in my code, basically the player needs to be sprinting in order to slide. But right now there's a bug that if you're using hold sprint, you'd have to like hold down the sprint key and the crouch key at the same time in order to successfully slide. But what I want to make sure in the future of like figuring this thing out is if you just hold, if you're already sprinting, it'll cast that you're sprinting. And if your last state was sprinting and you hit crouch, it'll slide you. But right now, hold has a bug. So what I'm going to do, let me go back in here. And I'm going to set this to toggle for now, because the way that I want to set this up is based on whether or not your velocity is at a certain point. So let's go to keyboard and mouse. Let's put toggle sprint to on, apply those changes. And let me stop this, save that. And now I'm going to recompile from the IDE. Okay, so that compiled successfully. Basically what we did was we muted the input action inside of the code that's forcing us to crouch whenever we hit the crouch button, and we want to actually do that inside of the ability now. So I'm going to navigate to input, abilities, let's go to that slide ability. And the reason that I'm doing this, because you're probably thinking, why wouldn't I just do this in the C++ code, like with an if statement, if I'm you know what I'm saying, if I want to slide, why don't I just tell myself to slide here? Well, in here, even though you can give yourself a tag in here, you can like apply a tag to yourself. it's just easier to do that inside of the ability where it's all encapsulated. You can work with the tag relationships and things like that. Because basically what we want to do is if we're sliding, we want to apply a tag to ourselves to let ourselves know that we're sliding, because that's the tag that we're going to use whenever we are inside our animation state to know that we're sliding. And for this project, we won't be changing the third person, but in my project that's on sale on my Patreon, as well as like any professional project, your sliding state is going to have a sliding animation. So you need to have a replicated way of telling everyone else that you're sliding. And that's where the ability comes in, because if not, you have to replicate a state, a new state outside of gas in order to share that with everyone else in the game. So that's the reason I choose to do it inside of the ability, because you can easily just apply force to yourself in the code and make sure you do it only on the server and so forth. But in here, it's just, I feel like it's just a little bit easier to replicate. Basically here, we want to determine whether or not we're moving fast enough. So let's make a function and let's say let's say this is can slide, and this is going to be pure and const. It's going to return a Boolean, and this is going to be, let's see, b can slide. So basically, we want to base this off of our movement component's velocity. So let's get our Lyra character. Let's get our custom movement component. I didn't make a getter for that. So let's get our movement component. And then what we can do is get the velocity of this. And let's check the length, just like we did for the sprint animation. We can get the length of this and make sure that this is greater than the threshold. So if this is greater than the threshold, and you can set this threshold to whatever you want. I'm gonna promote it to a variable right now. Let's see, this is the slide speed threshold. And let's set that to something like, it's got to be faster than, our walking speed, which is 600. So as long as our speed is, I guess, let's just say 675. If we're moving faster than that, we should be able to slide. In a deeper project, you can base your slide strength, which is this here. You can base this on a value of how fast you're moving. And like Apex Legends, when you get like a dead slide because you're moving too slow or you don't have enough velocity yet, you get a slide, but it won't go very far. So you can kind of do that in your game as well. But yeah, if our current speed is greater than our slide speed threshold, and doesn't gotta say and, let's say and Boolean, and we are moving on the ground. Now, there's a reason I'm not doing this in the override function on can activate ability, because we want to be able to activate this ability even if this stuff is false. Because if this is false, we just want to crouch. So if these two things are true, then we are pretty much able to slide. So let's get this here and say, if this, we want to do this, right? We want to slide. And then if this is false, we want to come here and get our Lyra character. Let's go ahead and just say crouch and toggle crouch. So yeah, no matter what, we'll just toggle the crouch, because if I'm crouched, it'll uncrouch. If I'm not crouched, it will crouch. So here but the thing is, if it's false, we want to toggle our crouch, but also if it's true, we want to set ourselves to crouching as well, because if we aren't crouched, we want to crouch. So let's get this here. And that'll set us to crouching. I can compile this. And let's test this puppy out. So I switched it to hold speed, remember that, or to hold sprint so that this could work. So now when we crouch, we slide. And if we uncrouch, oh, okay. So that's telling me that something's going wrong there. Apparently this is passing even though our velocity is not. So let's check this. So our velocity length is greater than the speed threshold of 675 and it's moving on ground. Somehow this is passing true. Let me double check this. Oh, you want to know why? It's because we don't cancel the sprint. So right now we're still sprinting. So our velocity is still higher than the sprint. So what this slide needs to do is it needs to cancel the sprint. But in order to do that, we need to give this a little bit more information. So let's get this ability tags, or let's do here ability, and let's add a sub tag right here, and let's call this slide. And in this activation on tag, these are the tags that you get when you activate this ability. Let's go ahead and say ability slide, and let me just search it. Let me just search slide. So we'll get this tag whenever we activate this ability. And then inside of our tag relationship map, let me search a little bit outside of there. Just look tag relationships. So inside of here, I don't know if I introduced this to you guys before, but this is basically how you globally say, if this tag is active, do something to these tags. So if our slide tag is active, we want to cancel the sprint. So let's add an array element to this. And down here, the ability tag we're looking for is ability slide. And if this ability tag is active, the ability tags we want to cancel is sprint. So let's look for sprint. And right now we just got an input tag. So let me see here. Let me see. And so we're not actually ability type action. And one thing we can do, we can always go to a gameplay tag, and we can look and see where it is. So we can drop here and say search for references, and we see what it's used in this emote, so we can see how it's used. And basically it's the ability tag right here. So what that just tells me is that we didn't give our slide or our sprint an ability tag. See, it doesn't have an ability tag. So we can say ability, and I think it's ability.type. Yeah, so ability.type action, and let's add a subtag to this and say sprint. And yeah, that's pretty much all we need right there. So we go back to our tag relationships, and the ability tags to cancel is this ability action sprint. So I'm gonna search sprint again. So ability type action sprint, and we'll cancel that. So we'll no longer be sprinting when we are sliding. So I'll start sprinting, I'll slide, and you see we went back to walking speed. And if I hit crouch again, we just uncrouch. And if I sprint again, slide, oh, well, we didn't end the ability there. So I'm finding the bugs. So after we do this, we need to end the ability, because we're no longer able to call the ability if it's not ended. So after we just uncrouch from being crouched, we'll go ahead and end the ability. And this allows you to, you can still crouch here. You can still crouch. And now you can sprint, and you can slide. That is another bug I just found here. So if I try to do like a slide cancel, so if I like hit crouch twice real fast, I'll slide twice. So let me see something here. We want to actually have a slide cancel. So if we could just basically do this. We can set this Boolean to, I think we can use a Boolean here. So we can say is sliding, and then we can basically set this to true whenever this goes through. And on the client as well, we'll set this to true. Well, I don't think we really need to, do we? Because the server is really handling most of this. The input is just being driven by the client. And when this is false, we'll set this to false here. And then inside of our can slide, we'll check if we're already sliding. as well. So basically, I want to ask if we're moving fast enough, if we're moving on the ground, and we are not currently sliding. So if this is not true here, then we could slide. Try to put that in order. So that should allow us to have a slide cancel there. So let's just check that. Yeah, we just slid canceled there. Juke, juke. And we just canceled. Now we went into this walking state. We sprint. We let the slide play out, and then we can go back into crouching. But one thing that's bothering me is that the crouch is, you don't take a crouch speed punishment. So I think we can go ahead and apply that inside of here. Actually, the best place to do this is inside of our movement component. But one thing I know we're going to run into is because since our movement component has no idea that we are currently sliding, it will always take the crouch in as just crouching. So, but I wonder, since we're overriding, will it even be a problem? So let's go and check this. Let's go to our get move speed here, or our get max speed function here inside the movement component. And basically what we can say is if the player is crouched, and you see here we got that const, and I said that we wouldn't change it, but since we are going to change it, let's remove this const right here. So if we are crouched, so if B is crouched, or is crouched, there we go. If is crouching is true, we want to set max speed equal, or we'll say times equal, and we want to actually give it a modifier that's less than 1 so that it'll reduce our speed. I'm gonna say 0.4 or 0.4 just to like help my OCD. But what you would want to do is make this a variable. But right now, since I just want to test to see if this even works, I am just going to pass in a magic number here. And if we're ever crouching, we'll return this speed here, whatever comes out of this multiplication. So let me go ahead and Control Alt and F11 to live code real quick. Okay, with the live coding successful, let's play test this. And let's see when we come out of we'll still get our sprint boost, but now you see our crouch takes us into a slower speed, which makes more sense to me. You get what I'm saying? Because when you're crouching, you shouldn't be able to move at the same speed as you're walking with your full leg. So we crouch into a slide here, and then once our slide ends, we go ahead and we go into a crouch walk. So on top of this, you want to add like some VFX. Usually I do like a little camera zoom so that you can like feel that you're moving faster. And maybe 3,500 is too much force, which is I don't know, that you can play around with this. You can also make it a variable and make it dependent on different factors. I'm gonna probably say like 2,500 feels good. And this is where using a curve would come in, because in my mind, just bursting into a slide like this is like, Jesus Christ, you know what I mean? Like you just burst into the slide like that, no matter what, even up the hill. This is where the physics-based slide would come into handy here, because you're able to slide with that full speed up the hill, and then once you reach the end of your slide, you're no longer sliding, no matter if you're on a hill or not. But yeah, definitely check that video out if you guys are interested in that. Let me stop this real quick. So pretty much that's all I wanted to cover in this video. In the next video, we're going to get started with adding more to our project here. I don't know whether I want to do the grenade or jump into the sniper rifle. If you guys have a preference, go ahead and leave me a comment below in the comment section, or just jump in the Discord and say, hey, I want to do the sniper rifle first, or hey, I'd rather do the grenade first. So it's up to you guys. I'm pretty much making this tutorial week by week, or these tutorials week by week. So from here on out, we got enough stuff set up to where we can start adding whatever we want now. You know what I mean? We got the base movement system set up. We got our first-person weapon, our first-person ADS all working how it's supposed to. Let me check something real quick, because I didn't actually check this in the last video. When you ADS, Ah, you see that? It still comes out of the first person. So something's happening here where we are coming out of the third person rifle even as the first person. So I don't know. That's actually pretty weird, right? Because when we were playing as two clients, we're playing as two clients. Let me go ahead and press play here with two clients. And let me play as this guy over here so we can see. If I shoot here, it's coming. Oh, it's still coming out of the third person. I didn't recognize that. It looked like it was coming out of the first person. So something is going on with that. Maybe we need to fix that bug first before we get into that. I can't actually, this is why I hate recording on Shadowplay. I can't actually see how long this video is right now, but I feel like this video is getting kind of long. In the next video, what we're actually going to do is fix that first person, third person bug that's going on with the VFX. I thought we had it fixed. I thought it was working properly. I guess that I was wrong, but in the next video, we're going to fix it. So if you guys are ready for that, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.